All right. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Letters from Camp. This month, I am pleased to be joined by John Mistrangelo. John, how are you tonight?
Doing well.
All
Nice to be
right.
with
Thank you. So I've never met John, but I did notice on the alumni page that he, was a frequent commenter on different things that have been going on and different discussions and related to camp. So I thought he'd be an interesting person to have on. Um, so, John, we always like to start with kind of your camp journey. So, if you could maybe tell us a little bit about when you first came to camp, what years you worked on staff, what areas, that type of thing, that'd be great.
you. Okay. The first time I came to camp was, um, gosh, in that, like 1963 with my Sunday school class. My Sunday school teacher was George Tricoyer, and who was the scout executive at that time and the summer camp director. And that we had a cookout and he showed us around, and that got me into joining scouting. And then which was Troop 3 in Groton. And then that summer I went to camp with the troop from Groton, and 3 years as a camper, and then I guess it was like 5 or 6 years on staff after that.
And what areas did you work in when on staff?
Started. I worked in Scoutcraft for 2 years, and then somehow I had my heart set on becoming the dining hall steward, and took a shine to that job, and did that the third year, and then went back to being the program area director. Um, I think we were calling it an econ at the time. It was a combination of the Nature Lodge and the Scoutcraft area. And then the next year, it turned into activities director, which was sort of like an assistant program director, uh, covering a bunch of different places. Um, and then uh, the sort of the big switch happened my last year working on staff when we instead of being oriented to program areas, things changed up to being oriented towards the troop. And we had the commissioners and then commissioner aides, and Keith Sweeney and I were the two commissioner aides, and we um, sort of took the programming more to the troop campsites and made it troop specific as opposed to individuals filtering into program areas.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I'd always heard that was kind of the model that it was more of a troop-based program, but that was kind of a shift from when you had started, huh?
It absolutely was.
Hmm.
And then sort of along the way, I got drafted to go to National Camping School, and I was sort of ended up being one of the instructors on how to be the commissioner's aide at camp. So
Excellent. So what do you think? What are your kind of some of your favorite memories from camp back then, especially maybe things that maybe don't happen at camp anymore for one reason or another?
and I saw, you had that on our list of questions to think about, and I was thinking certainly one thing that doesn't happen anymore. There used to be the morning skinny dips that were scheduled down at the waterfront, and I'm guessing that went out for many reasons.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's a definite. Um, and then, of course, I guess the thing that in seeing pictures and videos from camp now, it's the change in having both male and female scouts at camp
Mhm.
is it's sort of like at first it was like sort of a shock. You just didn't expect to see it, and there it was. And
Mhm.
now it looks as natural as anything. Um, and I'm
Yeah.
guessing the ladies probably add a lot to camp. And I know my the Naval Academy's I'm in Maryland, so the Naval Academy is sort of a point of reference. They always joke that when they started admitting women to the Naval Academy, the average score on entering freshmen or midshipmen went up. Uh, so I'm sure that probably happened at camp as well.
Yeah, one of the interesting things is that we were definitely at Winoxet ahead of the curve because we had venture crews coming long before that was kind of the model at scout camp. So we had females in camp through that kind of aspect, but then as the program became co-ed, it definitely was kind of a seamless transition, and it's definitely added a lot to both staff and the program and all of that. Yeah, it's definitely a plus for the program, I think.
Hmm.
Um, so if being at camp kind of in the 60s, you must have seen a lot of kind of the big revival of camp and a lot of money put into new buildings and new kind of facilities. What was that like to kind of be there at that time?
Um, it was, I mean, that was great to see the transformation of camp. The first year I was at camp, we were in the Thayer Lodge dining hall, and I think that was the last year that it was used as a dining hall. And then it was, I think everything but the kitchen was torn down. After that, the kitchen became the quartermaster shack, and the cement slab from Thayer Lodge became a basketball court. Uh, so that was a big change. The new buildings and I think that year, of course, the dining hall was being built. Um, New dining hall. The provisional cabins were new. The nature lodge was new. The campfire circle was new. The chapel was new. Uh,
I didn't
the
get that. Could you try again?
the craft shop was added, so it was a lot going on. And then I remember towards the end of the building boom, uh, I think the last building that was put up while I was up there was the new Ranger storage building. Bob Brown and I were assigned on a couple of Sundays to help hoist rafters and plywood up for the roof. I think George Moore was. I think that was one of my comments on one of the posts. George Moore was up there helping build the thing, which I'm sure he contributed to greatly. Um, but it
Yeah,
was.
yeah. So one of the interesting things that we have the 100th anniversary banquet coming up, and one of kind of the program features is going to be kind of this um, starting of the Winoxet Legends, kind of like a Hall of Fame. You mentioned George Trepere in the beginning was your Sunday school teacher, and I'm sure you worked with him kind of for many years. What was he like? Because that's a name I've certainly seen on plaques and signs around camp, and certainly there a very long time. But what was he kind of like?
Um, he had a great singing voice, I'll say for one thing. I remember that greatly. And he was just a very even, a very nice person, and a quiet leader. And I can remember always one of the things he did with a lot of skill was the sort of the start of the camping season or the start of staff week, actually, just getting the staff oriented and lots of people, knowing most everyone was a stranger to everyone else, and to kind of get the introductions and to start building the bonds that help make the program uh, excel for the summer. That was a real strong point. And he was there during it. It's sort of, you know, knowing all that went on, and then knowing that he was the leader through all of that time, is, certainly impressed me. And that was, he was the reason that I wanted wanted to go into professional scouting originally. So,
Interesting. All right, so we can shift gears and go into our lightning round. So first off, do you have a favorite camp song?
there were many. I'll say Pink Pajamas simply because it was I think it may have been the first one that I had to lead at a campfire. So that would be a first choice.
How
Um,
about a favorite camp skit?
I was thinking about it. I don't think we did a lot of camp skits back then. I can remember maybe we did. We took hmm, uh, Mother Murphy and the Chicago Fire one as a
Oh yeah,
and tried do a little play acting to the verse. Um, Camp stories were a little bit more in vogue. That there was the Legend of Seiji, which I still don't really remember what the story was, but depending on who did it, there were a variety of versions out there, and that was done at campfires. Then there was I did one Smith Brothers Cherry. How do you stop the coffin? And take Smith Brothers Wild Cherry Cough Drops. Of course, a long lead up to get to that point, but that was another one that I recall.
Um, did you have a favorite camp meal?
When I was eating a camp meal, it was we'd have I think there was a roast beef dinner oftentimes on Saturday nights, last night of the camp cycle. Um, and it wasn't a favorite meal when I was the steward, though. So
Yeah.
it was probably the most difficult one to get out and on the table. We had one time I recall the the meat was shipped to us frozen instead of fresh, and timing was off, and things were late. I think Dave Russo was the program director at that point, and he called up to the dining hall and was all kinds of mad because he had the priest there to do mass at camp Saturday night, and the dinner was held up, and the dinner was holding up mass, and one thing led to it. So a memorable evening at Camp Watts.
Absolutely. How about a favorite place in camp?
I'd say the lake, which I'm seeing your background there. So, um, I guess the thing I always think about is that the Order of the Arrow uh, tap outs. Then I guess they're now call outs. Is that
Mhm.
the the name change? But
Yep.
that was always very dramatic. There was a runner came down with a bow and arrow and fired a burning arrow out over the lake to signal when then the canoes came converged in with torches and all, and then the lighting of the actual fire. So it was really kind of a neat deal every week that was done. Um,
Yeah. Besides the office, the waterfront was the place I spent the most time. So definitely with you on that. And then was there anyone kind of as you were coming up as a camper, younger staff member who may have served as kind of like a mentor, someone you really looked up to?
Gosh, there were a lot. The first I'm we're inundated with mosquitoes flying around here, so it's sort of reminiscent of camp. I guess it's appropriate. Um, Chexie Rice was the first. He was the first. He was the Scoutcraft area head my first year at camp. So he was someone. Um, there was George Vaught. He was a chaplain first year, and I did my Eagle project working with George Vaught on Sunday services, chapel services. So he was another one. Um, then as far as contemporaries, Bob Krantz, who I worked with, he was the assistant cook when I was the steward, and he sort of showed me the ropes in the dining hall. Freddie Burgoyne, who I think still down in Clinton, Freddie he was I think an assistant camp director and had responsibility for the dining hall, and he was another person that I learned a lot from back then.
Yeah, we so previous a couple months ago we did an episode with three of his nephews, Dan, Chris, and Jim Burgoyne, and they're from
Ah,
Lancaster. So
yeah,
definitely still scouting going strong in that family.
good, good to know.
Um, so any kind of closing thoughts, any kind of parting thoughts before we wrap up?
Ah, just I guess over the years moved to Maryland and sort of went away from scouting, but have always Camp Monoxide is I think, as I said to you in the email, near and dear. I think of it often. I learned a lot there. A lot of what I ended up doing for a living were related to things working with folks that I learned uh, at Camp Wanaxet. Sort of one of the great ironies in all this is that one of my good friends from college was Dennis St. Jean, and my last time up at camp was his first time, and I gave him his tour of camp. So when he was and then he was the camp director that summer. So anyway, just good
Well,
memories.
definitely got to get you back up and show you around, show you all the changes.
I hear
So
there are many. So
yes, definitely welcome at any time. But thank you for joining me for this episode of Letters from Camp.
thank you, Mike.